My sister stood beside my parents at the center of the room, smiling like she'd just won something she didn't have to earn. The country club ballroom in Carmel, Indiana looked exactly like my mother wanted. Cream tablecloths, gold-rimmed plates, crystal glasses catching warm light. A string quartet tucked into the corner playing music nobody was really listening to. 40 guests in cocktail dresses and press suits nodding politely, laughing on cue, admiring the Carter family milestone. 40 years of marriage, 40 years of reputation management. I arrived in uniform earlier that afternoon to help carry decorations inside. By dinner, I'd changed into a simple navy dress. Nothing flashy, nothing that asked for attention. I'd spent enough years in the Air Force to know when to blend in and when to stand tall. Tonight wasn't about me, that was clear. My father tapped his glass with a fork. The room quieted. My mother clasped his arm, ready for the moment she'd rehearsed in her head all week. "Thank you all for being here," my father said. 40 years ago, Donna and I promised to build a strong family. Tonight we celebrate that. Polite applause. My mother smiled like a woman who'd earned every compliment in advance. Then my father continued, "And to mark this anniversary, we have a surprise. Next week we're taking the whole family to Disney World. Another celebration, just us." The room lit up. Guests clapped louder. Someone whistled. My sister Madison actually bounced in her chair. "That's amazing," she said. "The kids are going to freak out." My mother reached for Madison's hand like she'd just completed the picture in her mind. Daughter, son-in-law, grandkids, perfect family. I felt something small and unexpected loosen in my chest. A vacation, a real one. No deployments, no night shifts, no emergency logistics drills. Just sun crowds, bad popcorn, and overpriced souvenirs. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine it. Then I asked the most reasonable question in the world. "What time is our flight?" The words barely left my mouth before the air changed. Madison turned toward me, smile still fixed, eyes sharpening just enough to make sure I understood my place. "Oh, she said, soft and sweet. "You're not coming." The room didn't react at first. People assumed they misheard. I assumed I misheard. "I'm sorry," I said. Madison leaned back in her chair, folding her hands over her stomach, like she was presenting a solution, not a sentence. "Someone has to stay behind and watch the kids," she said. "Ethan and I really need this trip. Mom and Dad deserve it too." My mother nodded. Not apologetic, not hesitant, just confirming what had already been decided. "You're good with structure," she added. "You'll handle it best." I looked around the room, 40 faces, some surprised, some uncomfortable, some pretending to sip wine so they wouldn't have to make eye contact. Nobody spoke. Nobody challenged it. The string quartet kept playing like nothing had happened. I was being dismissed from a family vacation I'd just been invited to in front of everyone like a staff assignment. Madison smiled again. Same smile, different meaning. "There you go," she said, all settled. I could feel my pulse in my ears. Not from anger, not yet. From that sharp moment when you realize a pattern you've lived inside for years is suddenly visible to strangers. I forced a small smile. Years of military discipline are good for moments like this. "Of course," I said, "whatever you need." My mother relaxed. My father raised his glass again. Guests clapped, relieved the discomfort was over. Conversation restarted. Laughter returned. The party moved on, but something had shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly, just enough to matter. I sat there, hands resting in my lap, posture straight, face neutral, exactly how I'd stood during briefings in war zones. Back then, I'd been responsible for moving food, fuel, medical supplies across hostile territory. I'd coordinated convoys under fire. I'd made decisions that kept people alive. Yet here in a room filled with people who supposedly loved me, I was being told my role was to stay home and babysit because I was good with structure. A woman at the next table leaned toward her friend and whispered, "Is she in the military?" "Yes," the friend whispered back. "Air Force." The first woman nodded slowly, as if that explained why I could be reassigned like equipment. Madison's husband, Ethan, raised his glass toward me across the table. "Appreciate you, he said. "Couldn't do it without you." He meant the sentence as praise. It landed like confirmation. I didn't drink. I didn't eat. I just sat there watching the Carter family celebration roll forward without me even while I sat inside it. My mother moved from table to table, basking in compliments. My father told stories about work and retirement. Madison posted pictures to her phone, already building the narrative of a perfect family getaway. None of them looked at me again that night unless they needed something passed across the table. When dessert arrived, my mother caught my eye from across the room and mouthed, "You're okay, right?" I nodded. Of course I did. I'd been nodding my whole life. Later, when the guests began to leave, I stood to help clear plates. Habit. My mother waved me off like she was being generous. "You don't have to do that tonight," she said. But her tone made it clear that tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, I would. I stepped outside for air instead. The Indiana night was cool, quiet. A parking lot full of cars belonging to people who had just watched me be removed from my own family plan in real time. My Jeep sat at the far end where I'd parked it, so Madison's Lexus could have the front space. I stood there for a moment, breathing slowly, shoulders squared, expression calm. Years of training had taught me not to break under pressure, not in combat zones, not in briefing rooms, not now. But as I looked back at the glowing windows of the ballroom, one thought settled in with surprising clarity. They had just reassigned me again, and this time I wasn't sure I was willing to accept the mission. I unlocked my Jeep and sat behind the wheel, hands resting on the steering wheel, engine still off, letting the quiet settle before I drove home. By the time I pulled into my parents' driveway, most of the guests were gone. The lights inside the house were still bright. Laughter drifted through the walls. The celebration continued without needing me. That part was familiar. I parked on the street where my car always lived, because Madison's Lexus belonged in the driveway. My mother once said guests notice what's in the driveway first. I believed her. I always moved my car without being asked. Inside, my heels clicked on the tile floor. My mother was collecting gifts and cards, her hands moving with the efficiency of someone who never missed a detail. My father loosened his tie. Madison was already scrolling through photos on her phone, picking which ones to post. Nobody asked how I felt. Nobody needed to. I had already played my role. That role hadn't started tonight. It had been written years ago. I grew up in this house. Same white siding, same trimmed hedges, same expectation that we looked like a family that had everything under control. Madison was the sparkling one, cheerleading, homecoming queen, the child who fit naturally into my mother's vision of femininity and social perfection. I was the quiet one, straight A's. No drama, no demands, no problems. My parents liked low maintenance. I became an expert. When I joined the Air Force at 18, my mother told everyone she was proud. She said it at church, she said it to neighbors, but at home, the questions stopped quickly. Where are you stationed? When do you visit? Are you still single? Nothing about what I did, nothing about the pressure, nothing about the nights I didn't sleep, nothing about the responsibility of keeping supply lines running for units that depended on them to survive. When I came back from my first deployment, my mother hugged me at the door and said, "You lost weight. Are they feeding you enough over there?" Then she asked if I could help Madison plan her engagement party. Madison's life unfolded like a magazine spread. Wedding, house, babies, her husband Ethan sliding into the family like he'd always been there. Every milestone celebrated, every accomplishment announced, every difficulty accommodated. My life unfolded in schedules, duty, rosters, briefing rooms, and metal desks under fluorescent lights. I didn't talk about it much, not because I was secretive, because nobody asked. When I visited home, my suitcase always went into my old basement room, no guest room, no thought that maybe I'd want a bed not covered in my high school yearbooks and childhood trophies. I never complained. I unpacked quietly and made the space work. Holidays followed a rhythm. Thanksgiving, I arrived early. My mother handed me a list, turkey timing, side dishes, table settings. Madison arrived later with the kids carrying a store-bought pie and stories about how exhausting motherhood was. I nodded sympathetically while stirring gravy. Christmas, I wrapped gifts because my mother said her wrists hurt. Somehow her wrists never hurt during bridge club. Birthdays, I organized balloons, cupcakes, games, cleanup. Madison opened presents, Ethan grilled. My father poured drinks. My mother told guests how lucky she was to have such a helpful daughter. Helpful. That was my family rank. Once a neighbor asked me at a barbecue, "So what do you do, Emily?" Before I could answer, my mother said, "She's in the Air Force, very structured. She does well with orders, like I was a well-trained appliance." I smiled, because that's what I did. At family dinners, Madison talked about real estate markets and school districts. Ethan talked about closing deals. My father talked about his golf score. My mother talked about church committees. When conversation reached me, it was usually, "Are you still at the same base, or do they move you a lot?" Then the topic drifted away again. No one asked what it felt like to coordinate supply convoys in hostile zones. No one asked about the junior officers who leaned on me when things went wrong. No one asked how it felt to carry responsibility that didn't come with applause. But they remembered I was good with structure, good with responsibility, good with handling things. So when Madison needed a babysitter, I was already in position. When my parents wanted a smooth holiday, I was already assigned. When something needed organizing, I was already deployed. And when nobody needed anything, I was invisible again. I told myself this was normal. Families have roles. Mine just happened to be reliability. I was proud of being dependable. In the military, dependability meant trust. In my family, it meant availability. There was a moment last year when I almost questioned it. Madison had called at the last minute. "Can you take the kids this weekend?" Ethan and I need couple time. I was in the middle of preparing a logistics presentation for a visiting general. I told her I had work. Madison laughed. "You work on computers. You can do that anytime." Please, I canceled my plans and drove home. Because that's what I did. Later that weekend, my mother patted my arm and said, "You're such a blessing to this family. Not once did anyone ask what I needed." Tonight at the country club hadn't created a new story. It had simply said the quiet part out loud. "You are not coming. You will stay and watch the kids. You're good with structure. You'll handle it best." I hung my coat in the hallway closet. My mother called from the kitchen. "Emily, before you go to bed, can you help me pack some of the decorations away?" My feet are killing me. I walked into the kitchen, picked up a box, started stacking plates. My mother smiled, satisfied, already moving on to her next task. "You're good at following structure," she said. "That's why we rely on you." I nodded again, but this time the nod felt different. Not agreement. Assessment. I carried the last box of decorations into the storage closet, set it on the shelf, and closed the door without making a sound. The house had settled into post-party calm. The dishwasher hummed. A faint smell of frosting and candle wax lingered in the air. My parents had gone upstairs. Madison and Ethan had left earlier, already talking about packing list and stroller rentals. The kids would be dropped off in 3 days. That plan was already in motion. Of course it was. I headed toward the basement stairs, but halfway down, I realized I still needed to send a report to my commanding officer. A supply route audit was due by morning. I'd pushed it back because of the anniversary dinner. Another accommodation, another quiet adjustment. My laptop was still in my Jeep. I didn't feel like walking back outside. My mother's laptop sat open on the kitchen counter. She used it for recipes, church emails, and online shopping. Borrowing it wasn't a big deal. She'd borrowed my things my whole life without asking. I opened the laptop. The screen lit up with her inbox. Gmail, already logged in. I didn't intend to look at anything else. I just needed a browser to access my military portal. That was the plan. Then I saw my name, not in a folder, not buried, right there in a subject line. Disney arrangements, Emily situation. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. I knew I shouldn't click. I also knew I was going to. The email thread opened. From Donna Carter to Madison Reed, keep Emily here to watch the kids. She doesn't have anything important to do anyway. The Air Force will still be there when we get back. Might as well make use of her. I read it once, then again. The words didn't rearrange themselves into something kinder. Another reply sat beneath it. From Madison Reed to Donna Carter, exactly. She's perfect, free childcare. She's used to following structure. It works out for everyone. Free childcare. Used to following structure. It works out for everyone. I stared at the screen. No shaking hands. No dramatic gasp. Just a slow, cold understanding spreading through my chest. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't thoughtlessness. This was planning. They hadn't decided tonight. They'd decided a week ago. The anniversary dinner, the public announcement, the whole family phrasing, the smile, the quick answer when I asked about flight time. All rehearsed, all coordinated, all settled before I ever walked into the ballroom. I scrolled. Another message from my mother. She'll feel useful. It's good for her. Useful, not loved, not appreciated. Useful. I took a breath that felt unusually steady. In the Air Force, when something goes wrong, you collect evidence first. You don't react on instinct. You document. You verify. You secure the facts. So I did exactly that. I took screenshots, each email, each timestamp, each sentence that confirmed my role in their plan. I sent them to my own secure email. Then I cleared the sent folder. I cleared the trash. I logged out of her account. I opened a blank browser window and sent my work report like nothing had happened. By the time I shut the laptop, the house was silent. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd wrapped gifts, served meals, helped children with homework, wiped spills, folded napkins, smiled through conversations that never included me. I didn't feel angry. Anger would have been easier. I felt something cleaner, sharper, clarity. In the military, clarity saves lives. You identify the mission, you identify the terrain, you identify the threat, then you decide. Tonight the terrain had shifted. I wasn't the invisible helper by accident. I was the invisible helper by design. My phone buzzed. A new email. From United States Air Force Personnel Command. Captain Emily Carter, congratulations. You have been selected for the Command Logistics Leadership Program at the Defense Logistics Training Center, Monterey, California. Report date 6 weeks from today. I stared at the message. I'd applied months ago. A competitive program, limited seats, a career-defining step. I'd almost forgotten about it in the chaos of everyday obligations. 6 weeks. 6 weeks until a new post. 6 weeks until a new environment. 6 weeks until I didn't have to be here. I looked back at my mother's laptop on the counter. She doesn't have anything important to do anyway. I almost laughed. Not loudly, just a small breath of irony. Because while they were planning how to use my time had just been reassigned by someone who actually valued it. I stood up, turned off the kitchen light, walked downstairs to the basement room that still smelled faintly of old carpet and laundry detergent. I didn't pack. I didn't cry. I didn't draft a speech in my head. I just lay on the bed fully awake, staring at the ceiling, running logistics like I always did. 6 weeks. Enough time to finish duties. Enough time to prepare. Enough time to leave. They had already written my role in their vacation. Now I was writing my role in my own life. And for the first time, the plan didn't include asking anyone for permission. I woke before my alarm, already running calculations in my head. Not supply numbers, not convoy routes, not training schedules. Time, 6 weeks until Monterey, 42 days. Plenty of room to close out duties at my unit. Plenty of room to prepare a transition plan. Plenty of room to pack a life that had always been arranged around other people. Upstairs, I could hear my mother moving around, already starting the day. Coffee machine, cabinet doors, the soft hum of someone comfortable in a house where everything ran according to her expectations. I went upstairs in uniform boots, laced hair tight in a bun. My mother glanced up from the counter. "Morning," she said. "Your sister texted. She'll drop the kids off Friday before the trip. Not a question." A schedule update. "Okay," I said. My voice sounded normal. That surprised me. No crack, no tremor, no hint that the foundation under this house had already shifted. I left for base. The drive to the Air Force installation outside Indianapolis was familiar. Cornfields, open road, a radio station talking about weather, nothing dramatic. Just the quiet rhythm of a place where nothing ever changed unless you forced it to. At the gate, security waved me through. On base, people nodded as I walked past. Junior officers, enlisted personnel. They greeted me by rank, by name, by position, Captain Carter, not helper, not babysitter, not the one who follows structure. Inside my office, I logged onto the personnel portal and opened the official orders again. Command Logistics Leadership Program. Defense Logistics Training Center, Monterey, California. I read every line carefully. Report date, contact officer, training objectives, housing information. It was real, concrete, official. No family spin, no reinterpretation, just fact. At 900, I had a briefing with my commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Harris. He was a man who cared about preparation and precision, not small talk. "Captain Carter," he said, motioning to the chair. "I saw your selection notice. Congratulations. That program is no joke." "Thank you, sir." He nodded. "You'll need to start transition planning. I want a full handover package for your responsibilities within 4 weeks. Can you handle that? I almost smiled. Sir, I said, handling things is what I do. He gave a brief grin. I've noticed. There it was, recognition, simple, professional, real. By lunchtime, I'd already started drafting my transition checklist. Tasks, contacts, deadlines, everything with a clear chain of responsibility. In the military, you don't disappear. You hand over. You make sure the mission continues without you. It struck me that I'd never done that with my family. I'd never formally resigned my position as default problem solver. I just stayed. That would change, but not today. Today was preparation. In the afternoon, I sat in my car outside the base and looked at the number saved in my phone under Aunt Lorraine. We hadn't spoken in months. Not because we didn't care, because life moved fast and neither of us demanded attention. She picked up on the second ring. Well, she said, if it isn't the invisible Air Force niece. I laughed once. It felt good. Hey, Lorraine. I got into the command logistics program. There was a pause, then a sharp inhale. You're kidding. I'm not, Monterey. Yes. Another pause, then warmth in her voice. About time someone with sense recognized you. I stared at the steering wheel, my grip relaxed. I need to talk to you about something else too, I said, and I told her. The anniversary dinner, the Disney trip, the babysitting assignment, the emails. I didn't dramatize it. I just stated facts, like a report. Lorraine listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You know I've got a spare room above the diner. I swallowed. I figured. And you know I don't ask questions I already know the answer to, she said. So I'll say this instead. You've served your country. You've earned your place. You don't owe unpaid labor to people who don't see you. Her voice was steady. No sentimentality, no pity, just truth. I don't want to cut them off, I said. I just don't want to be their default anymore. Lorraine snorted softly. Honey, boundaries feel like betrayal to people who benefited from your silence. I let that sit. Can I stay with you when I get there, I asked. You'll have clean sheets and bad diner coffee waiting, she said. And you'll be 5 minutes from a beach you've earned the right to enjoy. I smiled. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, she said. Thank yourself when you finally stop apologizing for existing. We hung up. I sat in the car for a while longer watching people move across the base. Trucks delivering equipment. Airmen walking in groups. A mechanic wiping grease off his hands. Everyone here had a role. A defined purpose. A place earned through training and effort. No one here expected free childcare as a condition of belonging. On the drive back to my parents' house, I rehearsed nothing. No confrontation, no dramatic exit speech, no announcement. I simply carried one decision quietly inside me. I would complete my duties. I would transfer to Monterey. I would build a life where my reliability was respected, not exploited. And when my family realized I would not be home to receive their children with open arms and folded schedules, I would deal with that when it happened. For now, there was planning to do. And for the first time, the plan was mine. I carried my packed duffel bag down the basement stairs before sunrise, careful not to let the wheels thump against each step. The house was quiet. No coffee machine, no morning news, no footsteps from my mother preparing another list of tasks for me to complete. Everyone was still asleep. That was intentional. I didn't need an audience for this part. My Jeep was already loaded. 2 bags of clothes, 1 box of personal files, my laptop, my uniform garment bag. Everything I actually owned fit in the back without effort. I left the rest behind. Old trophies, childhood posters, extra dishes, the life that had been curated for me instead of by me. I walked back inside one last time and placed my basement key on the kitchen counter. Next to it, I left a short note. Gone for training assignment. I'll contact you when settled. Emily. No apology, no explanation, just information, like any official movement order. I closed the door behind me and stepped into the cold Indiana morning. I didn't look back at the house. I'd looked at it my entire life. The highway stretched ahead gray and open. I turned the radio off. I didn't need distraction. I needed awareness. Like every convoy I'd ever planned, I checked mirrors, fuel level, route contingencies. Habit, comfort, control. By mid-morning, cornfields gave way to long stretches of interstate. Trucks, rest stops, diners with faded signs, America in motion. Nobody knew who I was, nobody expected anything from me. It was strange and peaceful. At a gas station in Illinois, I stepped out to refill the tank. A little boy pointed at my Air Force sticker on the bumper. "Are you a pilot?" he asked. "No," I said. "I make sure the pilots get what they need." He thought about that for a second. "That sounds important." "It is," I said. His mother smiled at me. "Thank you for your service," I nodded. "You're welcome." No follow-up question about babysitting. Back on the road, I ate a sandwich with one hand and kept driving. I stopped only when I needed gas or sleep. Cheap motels, clean sheets, quiet rooms, nobody knocking on the door asking for help with anything. On the second night, I lay in a motel bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of an old air conditioner. My phone buzzed twice. Messages from Madison. "Hey Em, just checking you got home safe after the party." Another buzz. "Remember we dropped the kids off Friday morning?" I didn't reply. I didn't block her either. Silence was enough. On the third day, the land began to change. Mountains in the distance. Air that smelled different when I cracked the window. By the time I crossed into California, the sky had softened into a clear blue that looked like someone had adjusted a setting I didn't know existed. I stopped at a lookout and stepped out. The Pacific stretched wide, calm, endless. I stood there in my boots and jacket, letting the wind hit my face. No structure, no orders, no expectations, just space. My phone buzzed again, this time my mother. "You didn't say goodbye." I read the message, then locked the screen. I drove the rest of the way with the windows down. By late afternoon, I turned onto a small street lined with shops and trees. A hand-painted sign swung slightly above a modest diner, Lorraine's Kitchen. A woman stepped outside, wiping her hands on a towel. Gray streaks in her hair, Navy veteran tattoo on her forearm. She looked exactly like I remembered and completely different at the same time. "Well, look at you," Aunt Lorraine said. "Captain Carter in the flesh." She hugged me once. Firm, real, no fake sentiment. "Room's upstairs," she said, pointing. "Coffee's terrible, breakfast is decent. Rules are simple. You live your life, I live mine. We respect both. That works for me," I said. Upstairs, the room was small but clean. A bed, a desk, a window that showed a slice of ocean in the distance. I put my bag down and sat on the mattress. It creaked. It felt solid. That evening, I helped wipe tables at the diner. Locals chatted. Tourists asked for recommendations. Nobody cared that I had once coordinated supply routes in hostile territory. Nobody needed me to solve their family problems. A man at the counter noticed my posture, my haircut, my bearing. "You military?" he asked. "Air Force," I said. He nodded with quiet respect and went back to his coffee. Later, Lorraine poured 2 cups and sat across from me. "You start training Monday," she said. "I'll drive you if you want." "I can handle it," I said. She smiled. I figured. I lay in bed that night not thinking about Disney tickets, babysitting schedules, or what my family might be doing at that moment. For the first time in years, I didn't feel on standby. I felt stationed. And tomorrow, I'd wake up somewhere I had chosen. I buttoned my uniform jacket, checked my reflection in the small mirror, and tightened my bun with the same precision I'd used for years. But this morning felt different. Not because of the uniform, because of the silence behind me. No mother calling out a reminder. No sister texting a last-minute favor. No children asking for breakfast. Just my own breathing, my own plan, my own mission. Lorraine slid a mug of coffee across the diner counter as I passed through. "Fuel," she said. "You'll need it." I took a sip. It was terrible. "Still terrible," I said. "Consistency is a virtue," she replied. I stepped outside into crisp coastal air and drove to the Defense Logistics Training Center. The base sat just beyond the town, modern, clean, efficient. The kind of place built for people who understood that preparation prevented chaos. At the gate, the guard checked my ID and waved me through with a nod. "Welcome to Monterey, Captain Carter." No one had welcomed me into my parents' house in years. Not like that. Inside the main building, a group of officers gathered in a briefing room. Different branches, different specialties. Same sharp posture, same controlled energy. The instructor, Colonel Ramirez, stepped forward. "This program exists for one reason," she said. "To prepare you to lead logistics operations under pressure. If you're here, someone believes you have potential. Over the next weeks, we'll find out if they're right. No applause. No fake smiles. Just expectation." I liked it immediately. The first exercise started that afternoon. A simulated humanitarian crisis. Supply lines cut, medical shortages, infrastructure damage. Teams were assigned regions to stabilize. My team included a Navy lieutenant, an Army captain, and a Marine logistics officer who looked like he could lift a truck. We were given limited data, conflicting reports, and a ticking clock. Figure it out, Colonel Ramirez said. People die if you don't. Old instincts clicked in. I organized the information, identified bottlenecks, assigned tasks, asked direct questions, cut through noise. The Navy lieutenant looked relieved. Finally, he muttered, "Someone who doesn't talk just to hear their own voice." Within an hour, we had a workable plan. By the end of the day, our solution was chosen as the most efficient. Colonel Ramirez nodded at me as the group dispersed. "Good leadership," she said, clear, calm, decisive. I thanked her and walked out of the building with a steady stride. No one called me helpful. They called me capable. Over the next days, the pace stayed intense. Long hours, complex problems, tight deadlines, people snapping under pressure, people stepping up. During a supply chain disruption drill, a younger officer froze when a scenario escalated unexpectedly. He stared at the screen like it might fix itself. I stepped beside him. "Give me what you know," I said. He blinked. "Routes A and C are blocked. Medical units will run out in 6 hours." "Good," I said. "Now give me options." He swallowed, started talking. I listened, filtered, refined. 10 minutes later, we had a solution. After the session, he caught up to me in the hallway. "Thanks, Captain," he said. "I was drowning in there." I shrugged. "You didn't drown, you just needed a structure." He smiled. "You're good at this." I almost laughed. If only my mother could hear that sentence now. At lunch, officers gathered outside under the sun. Conversations about career paths, past deployments, lessons learned. Nobody asked about my marital status. Nobody asked why I didn't have children. Nobody assumed my free time belonged to them. They asked what I'd worked on, what I wanted to do next, what kind of command I aimed for. I told them the truth. "I like making broken systems work," I said. A Marine officer grinned. "Then you picked the right chaos." In the evenings, I returned to Lorraine's diner. I helped wipe tables and restock shelves, not because I was expected to, but because it felt grounding. Simple work after complex days. One night, a customer recognized the base patch on my jacket. "You stationed here?" he asked. "Training program," I said. He nodded. "Good. We need smart ones. No backhanded compliments, no veiled assignments, just respect." Later, Lorraine leaned against the counter. "You're walking differently," she said. "I'm standing differently," I replied. She smiled. "Same thing." Halfway through the program, Colonel Ramirez gathered us again. "We'll run a final exercise tomorrow," she said. "One of you will be selected as team lead for a high-pressure scenario. No warning, no preparation. We'll see who thinks clearly when the map burns." The room buzzed with quiet anticipation. I didn't care whether I was chosen. Not because I lacked ambition, but because I already knew something important. In this place, my value was visible, measured, recognized, not assumed, not exploited. That night, I sat by the diner's back door, listening to the ocean somewhere beyond the dark. My phone buzzed. A new message from Madison. "Mom says you never confirmed Friday. What time should we drop the kids off?" I stared at the screen, then I turned the phone face down on the table and went back inside to close the diner. I shut off the diner's lights, locked the back door, and wiped my hands on a towel, the smell of coffee and grilled bread clinging to my clothes. Lorraine was counting the register. "Long day?" she asked. "Productive," I said. She glanced at my phone lying face down on the counter. "You're not going to answer that. Not tonight." She nodded once. No advice, no pushing. Lorraine didn't rescue people. She gave them space to rescue themselves. Upstairs, I showered and lay on the bed, letting the day replay in my mind. The training center, the respect, the structure that didn't come with exploitation, the simple rhythm of a life that felt like mine. By morning, the final exercise was underway. Colonel Ramirez walked into the briefing room with a folder in her hand. "Today's scenario is live-action simulation. One team lead will be assigned on the spot." She opened the folder. "Captain Carter, you're up." No fanfare, no dramatic pause, just fact. I stepped forward. My team gathered around, screens lit, maps filled with blinking red alerts. A simulated earthquake, collapsed infrastructure, cut communication lines, limited supply trucks, Too many variables, not enough time. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't try to dominate. I delegated, prioritized, simplified, asked for input when needed, made decisions when required. The room moved with me, not around me. 2 hours later, the scenario ended. Colonel Ramirez removed her glasses. Efficient, adaptive, clear chain of command, no wasted motion. She looked at me. That's what leadership looks like. The team exhaled. A few nodded at me with genuine respect, not because I needed them to, because they meant it. By afternoon, I was back in uniform, walking out of the center with a folder of evaluations under my arm and salt air brushing my face. Lorraine was sitting outside the diner when I pulled up. "You got the nod," she said. I handed her the evaluation sheet. She read the highlighted lines and whistled softly. "Command material," she said. "Not bad for someone who was supposed to be a babysitter this week." I smiled. Inside, she poured me a coffee. I didn't bother commenting on the taste anymore. It was part of the environment now, familiar, honest. I sat by the window watching tourists wander past art shops and bakeries. Monterey moved at its own pace. Nobody here rushed to impress anyone. Nobody here needed to perform family perfection. My phone buzzed again, then again, then again. Madison. Finally, I turned it over and opened the messages. "Emily, why aren't you responding? Mom is furious. We're flying out tomorrow. What time do we drop the kids off?" Another message came through before I could lock the screen. "I'm pregnant." I stared at that one. Not surprise, not joy, just recognition of a tactic. 5 minutes later, a photo arrived. A grainy ultrasound image with a caption, "Baby number 3. Due in December. I really need you." There it was. Not congratulations, not sharing happiness. Need, obligation, emotional leverage. Lorraine watched my face without asking. I typed one sentence. "I won't be home." Madison replied instantly. "What do you mean you won't be home?" I didn't answer. I put the phone down and finished my coffee. An hour later, a number I hadn't seen in months flashed on the screen. "Dad." I stepped outside to take the call. "Emily," he said, voice tight. "Your mother tells me you've gone to California without telling anyone." I left a note, I said. "That's not how family operates," he replied. "You can't just disappear." I looked at the street. A man walked his dog. A couple shared a sandwich on a bench. A child chased a pigeon. Ordinary life. No one disappearing. Just people choosing where to stand. "I didn't disappear," I said. "I reported to a new assignment." "This isn't about your assignment," he snapped. "This is about responsibility." I let that sit for a moment. "Responsibility," I repeated. "Like telling me I'm not part of the family vacation in front of 40 people, silence." "Like calling me free childcare in an email," I added. His breath hitched slightly. He didn't deny it. "You were supposed to help," he said. "Finally. That's what family does." "No," I said. "That's what unpaid labor does." He exhaled sharply. "Your sister is pregnant. She needs support." "She has a husband," I said. "She has parents. She has money. She has options." "And you have no heart," he said. I almost laughed. But it kept my tone flat. "I have a career. I have duties. I have a life. I'm not available." He lowered his voice. "If you don't come back, don't expect things to be the same." I looked at the ocean at the end of the street. Blue, endless, indifferent to family drama. "Things were never fair," I said. "Now they're just honest." I ended the call. When I walked back inside, Lorraine slid a plate of pie across the counter. "You're going to need sugar," she said. I sat down, took a bite. Sweet, solid, real. Madison called 3 times that night. I didn't answer. My mother left a voicemail about betrayal. I deleted it without listening all the way through. At midnight, I stepped onto the small balcony outside my room. The air was cold. The sound of waves carried through the dark. For the first time, my family's chaos wasn't inside my head. It was hundreds of miles away. And I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I stepped off the balcony and closed the door behind me, leaving the ocean air outside and the weight of the call where it belonged. By morning, I was back in uniform, driving onto base as if nothing unusual had happened. Because in a way, nothing had. I had made a decision. The rest was just reactions. That afternoon, the training center held a small recognition ceremony for officers who had completed the leadership program with distinction. Nothing flashy, just a formal gathering in the officers' lounge. coffee, light snacks, a few senior officers. Evaluation folders, quiet pride. Colonel Ramirez stood at the front. Captain Emily Carter, she said, for exceptional performance in command logistics leadership. I stepped forward. She handed me the certificate. A firm handshake, eye contact, respect, applause, controlled, professional, real. I turned to step aside and froze. My parents were standing near the entrance of the lounge, my mother in a tailored blazer, my father in a dress shirt he only wore for important appearances. Behind them, Madison and Ethan. Madison's hand rested on her stomach. Ethan scanned the room like he was assessing property value. They had found me. Every officer in the lounge turned to look at the unexpected civilians in the doorway. Colonel Ramirez raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She trusted her people to handle their lives. My mother walked forward, first heels clicking sharply on the tile floor. Emily, she said, too loud for the room. We need to talk. Conversations around the lounge thinned out. Coffee cups paused midair. A Navy commander near the window leaned back slightly interested. I handed my certificate to the nearest table and faced them. This is a military facility, I said. You can't just walk in here without checking in. We were let through, my father said. We're family. Madison stepped closer, eyes glossy. Emily. I'm pregnant, she said again, as if I hadn't read the message. I need you. The kids need you. Mom and Dad can't handle everything alone. Ethan nodded. We'll need you back home by the end of the week. Not a request, a directive. Old instincts tried to surface. Nod, agree, fix it. But I wasn't in my parents' kitchen. I was in an officer's lounge surrounded by people who had just watched me earn something. I kept my voice level. I'm not coming back. Madison blinked. You don't mean that. My mother stepped forward, lowering her tone, but not her volume. You're letting this military thing go to your head. Family comes first. Colonel Ramirez cleared her throat softly from behind me, not stepping in, just reminding the room she was there. I turned to my family again. Family, I said. Like the family that told me I wasn't part of the Disney trip. That was different, my mother snapped. Someone had to help. Madison folded her arms. You're acting like a martyr over babysitting. It's not a big deal. I took out my phone. No dramatic flourish, no shaking hand, just a simple movement. I'd like to read something, I said. My mother's face tightened. Madison's eyes widened slightly. I opened the screenshot. Email from Donna Carter to Madison Reed, I read. Keep Emily here to watch the kids. She doesn't have anything important to do anyway. Might as well make use of her. A murmur moved through the room. I scrolled. Reply from Madison Reed. She's perfect free childcare. She's used to following structure. It works out for everyone. Silence. Not awkward silence. Impact silence. My mother's lips parted. No words came out. Madison whispered, You weren't supposed to see that. A Marine officer near the snack table muttered wow under his breath. Not quietly enough. My father tried to recover. Emily, those were private family emails. So was my labor, I said, until tonight. Ethan stepped forward, tone sharpening. This is inappropriate. You're embarrassing your family in public. I tilted my head slightly. You planned my humiliation in public, I said. This is just transparency. Madison's voice cracked. I'm pregnant. Do you really want to abandon your sister? I looked at her. Not angry, not cold, just clear. You're not asking me to be a sister, I said. You're asking me to be staff. My mother finally found her voice. We raised you better than this. I let out a small breath of amusement. You raised me to be reliable, I said. Congratulations. I am. Colonel Ramirez stepped forward, not aggressively, just enough to shift the balance of the room. Captain Carter, she said, would you like a moment in my office? I shook my head. No, ma'am, I'm fine. The Navy commander near the window raised his coffee cup slightly toward me. A quiet salute. Lorraine had been right. Respect speaks softly. Madison's tears finally fell. I thought you liked helping, she whispered. I answered without raising my voice. You never asked. My father looked at the floor. My mother looked around, realizing the room was not on her side. Ethan suddenly cared a lot less about speaking. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. I wish you a healthy pregnancy, I said. I hope the kids are happy, but I will not return to Indiana to be your solution. Madison opened her mouth again, but Lorraine appeared at the doorway of the lounge, still in her diner. Apron, holding a paper bag. Emily, she said, you left your dinner on the counter. Several officers smiled. The tension cracked just enough. I picked up my certificate from the table. "Excuse me," I said, and walked past my family through the lounge out into the coastal afternoon shoulders. Straight pace, steady breath, calm. Behind me, nobody followed. I pushed open the lounge door and stepped into the sunlight, the certificate tucked under my arm. The sound of the ocean rolling in from somewhere beyond the base. My boots hit the pavement with a steady rhythm. Not rushed, not triumphant, just certain. Lorraine was waiting by my Jeep, leaning against the hood, paper bag still in her hand, like she'd been standing guard the entire time. "You done in there?" she asked. I nodded once. She didn't ask what was said. She didn't need details. She just handed me the bag. "Turkey sandwich, no pickles." "You're welcome." I took it. "Thank you." We got into the Jeep. I drove. Lorraine stared out the window, giving me space to breathe. Halfway back to the diner, my phone buzzed. "Dad." I didn't answer. It buzzed again. "Mom." I turned the phone off. Lorraine smirked slightly. "Silence is a beautiful boundary," she said. By the time we reached town, the sky had shifted to late afternoon gold. Tourists wandered with shopping bags. A street musician played a guitar badly but confidently. The world continued without caring who was mad at whom. At the diner, Lorraine unlocked the door and flipped the sign to closed. We stepped inside. The familiar smell of coffee and grilled onions wrapped around me. I sat at the counter and ate the sandwich slowly. Not because I was hungry, because grounding mattered. After a while, Lorraine poured herself a cup of coffee and sat beside me. "So," she said. "What happens now?" I wiped my hands with a napkin. "I finish the program," I said. "Then I take the next assignment they give me. I build a career. I live here or wherever the Air Force sends me. I answer family messages when I want to, not when they demand." Lorraine nodded. "That's called adulthood. Most people never get there." I smiled lightly. "Feels overdue?" My phone remained dark on the counter. No buzzing, no guilt-driven response, no anxiety about who needed me next. That night, I lay in bed with the window cracked open. The ocean air moved through the room. I listened to waves, not arguments. I closed my eyes without rehearsing future conversations in my head. The next morning, I woke early and drove to base. Routine, training, professionalism, no emotional hangover, no dramatic aftermath. Colonel Ramirez passed me in the hallway. "Captain Carter," she said. "Excellent composure yesterday." I paused. "Thank you, ma'am." She gave a knowing look. Not prying, just recognition. In the following days, life settled into rhythm. Training concluded. Final reports were submitted. Career paths discussed. I was offered a follow-on assignment at a major logistics command. Promotion track, long-term potential. When the official paperwork came through, I sat at the small desk in my room and signed it with a steady hand. No one congratulated me with a balloon arch. No one posted about it online. No one threw a party. And yet, it felt like the biggest milestone of my life. On the other side of the country, my family dealt with the Disney trip without me. I didn't get updates directly, but fragments arrived anyway. A text from Madison Oliver had a meltdown at the park. No idea what to do with him. No reply. Another text 2 days later. Sophie got sick. Mom freaked out. This trip is chaos. No reply. Then a final message I didn't realize how much you handled. I read it. I believed she meant it. I still didn't reply. Not out of spite, out of choice. Weeks passed. One evening I came home from base and found a letter on the counter. Lorraine had placed it there without comment. My father's handwriting. Emily. I saw your evaluation results through a contact. I'm proud of you. I didn't handle things well. I hope one day we can talk. 3 sentences, no excuses, no demands, no instructions. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Not forgiveness, not rejection. Just storage. Life moved forward. I learned the rhythm of Monterey. Morning training, evening diner, weekend walks by the ocean, conversations with people who saw me as a person, not a role. One afternoon I sat on a bench overlooking the water uniform jacket, off sleeves rolled up, hair down for once. The wind tangled it across my face. I didn't bother fixing it. A little girl nearby pointed at my boots. "Are you a soldier?" she asked. "Air Force," I said. She looked impressed. "Do you fight bad guys?" I smiled. "I make sure good people have what they need." She considered that. "Cool," she said, and ran back to her parents. I watched the waves roll in. one after another, constant, unbothered, free. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't invisible. I was simply here, by choice. I sat at the small desk in my room above the diner, reviewing a logistics proposal for my next assignment, when Lorraine knocked once and stepped in without waiting for an answer. She handed me a second cup of coffee. "You're starting to look like someone who lives here," she said. I took the cup. "I do live here." She nodded satisfied and left. The door clicked shut. I leaned back in the chair and let the quiet stretch for a moment. 6 months had passed since the anniversary dinner. 6 months since the ballroom, the Disney announcement, the sentence that rearranged everything. "You're not coming, you'll stay and watch the kids." If someone had told me that night what my life would look like now, I would have assumed they were selling motivational posters. Instead, it had been logistics, planning, follow-through, boundaries, all things I already knew how to do. I just hadn't applied them to myself before. I closed the proposal and stared out the window at a strip of ocean blue. People like to call stories like mine family revenge stories. They expect shouting destruction, dramatic takedowns, social ruin, something loud and satisfying. But real revenge, I'd learned, was much quieter. It was choosing yourself when people expected you to choose them. It was walking away from a role assigned to you without your consent. It was letting silence do the work that arguments never could. I didn't burn bridges, I just stopped crossing them every time someone whistled. In the Air Force, we talk a lot about after-action reports. You analyze what happened, what went wrong, what worked, what you do differently next time. So I did one for my old life. What went wrong was not that my family asked for help. Families help each other. That part is normal. What went wrong was that help became expectation, and expectation became entitlement. No one asked whether I wanted the role. No one asked whether I was tired. No one asked what I needed. They simply built their comfort on my compliance. In military terms, I had become a resource with no resupply plan. Eventually, resources run out. I thought back to the email. "She doesn't have anything important to do anyway." They believed that. Not because they were cruel masterminds, but because I never showed them otherwise. I never demanded recognition. I never set limits. I filled every gap so efficiently that they forgot I was human. That was on them. But part of it was also on me. Not blame, responsibility. In the service, we're trained to take ownership. Not for everything, just for our part. My part had been silence. My part had been saying yes, automatically. My part had been confusing usefulness with love. When I stopped doing that, everything changed. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily. I opened a drawer in the desk and pulled out my training certificate, the evaluation sheet, the letter from my father, a simple collection of paper proof that my life had shifted. None of these things screamed victory. They just whispered reality. I was no longer living to earn a place. I had one. People sometimes ask if I feel guilty. Guilt is what happens when you break a rule you believe in. I didn't break a rule, I rewrote one. The old rule was, be needed at all costs. The new rule is, be respected or be elsewhere. It's surprising how many problems disappear when you adopt the second one. I still talk to my family occasionally, short messages, updates, neutral ground. Madison sent another picture of her new baby. I replied with congratulations. No plans, no promises, no automatic availability. My mother sent a holiday greeting. I replied with a polite thank you. No apology, no re-entry into old patterns. My father sent another email. Hope California is treating you well. Stay safe. I replied with one sentence. I am. No one asked when I was coming home. Because home had changed definition. Home was now a room above a diner with terrible coffee and ocean air. A base where my work mattered. A future built by my own hands. A life where my phone did not control me. I walked downstairs to the diner for dinner. A couple sat at the counter, arguing playfully about pancakes. A group of locals watched a baseball game on a small TV. Lorraine wiped a table and nodded at me. Eat, she said. I took a seat, ordered food, listened to ordinary conversation that had nothing to do with my family. Later, as I washed my plate in the back sink, I thought about something Colonel Ramirez once said. Leadership is deciding what you will no longer accept. I'd applied that to convoys, to operations, to teams under stress. I finally applied it to myself. That was the real turning point. Not the lounge confrontation, not the screenshots, not the drive across the country, just a quiet internal decision I will not be free help again. I dried my hands and turned off the kitchen light. Outside, the Pacific rolled steadily toward the shore, wave after wave, unconcerned with past mistakes or future plans. I stepped into the cool night air and breathed in deeply, not because I had escaped something, because I had chosen something. I pulled my jacket tighter as I walked along the shoreline. Before sunrise boots sinking slightly into cool sand, the ocean breathing beside me, like a steady engine that never stalled. This had become my quiet ritual. No notifications, no obligations, no roles to perform, just movement, air, and space to think clearly. People who hear my story often ask the wrong question. They ask, "Do you hate your family now?" No. Hate takes energy. Hate keeps you tied to the very thing you're trying to escape. What I learned was something simpler and much more useful. I learned that love without boundaries isn't love, it's access, and access when unlimited turns into entitlement. That's where many people get stuck in family dynamics. They confuse being needed with being valued. They believe that if they stop filling every gap, everything will collapse, and they will be blamed. Here's the truth. If everything collapses when you step away, it means you were never being supported. You were being used as structural support. And that's not a family role. That's unpaid labor. I didn't walk away because I was cruel. I walked away because I was disappearing. If any part of this sounds familiar, I want to speak directly to you for a moment. Not as a character, not as a dramatic narrator, just as someone who lived it. If your family only calls when they need something, if your time is treated as public property, if your achievements are minimized while your sacrifices are expected, if you're praised for being so helpful but never asked what you want, that's not love, that's convenience. And the longer you play that role, the harder it becomes to leave it. So how do you change it without burning everything down? You start small. You say no once. Not with an explanation essay, not with a justification speech. Just no. Then you stay calm through the backlash, because there will be backlash. People who benefit from your silence will always call your voice selfish. Selfish is not a diagnosis. It's a complaint from someone losing control. Next, you stop responding immediately to every request. You let messages sit. You answer on your time, not theirs. That single change rewires how people see your availability. Then you build something outside the family role, a job, a hobby, a training course, a new community, a space where you are valued for who you are, not for what you provide. That's what the military did for me. It gave me a mirror that reflected my actual capabilities, not my assigned role. But it doesn't have to be the military. It can be a class, a new workplace, a side business, a friend group that doesn't treat you like infrastructure. Once you have a place where you are respected, it becomes much easier to recognize where you are not. Another hard truth. You don't need a dramatic confrontation to set boundaries. I did it because my family forced the situation into public space. But most people don't need that. You can simply stop agreeing, stop rearranging your life, stop apologizing for having needs. And if the relationship only survives when you are small, silent, and endlessly available, then the relationship was never about you in the first place. Some people will adjust. Some will respect the new line, some will not. You don't control their reaction, you only control your position. One of the biggest myths in family loyalty is that distance equals betrayal. It doesn't. Distance is sometimes the only way to preserve what little respect remains. I didn't cut my family out. I changed the terms of access. We talk, we update, we exchange polite messages. There's no screaming, no ongoing war, just a new structure. And structure, when fair, is healthy. If you're watching this and thinking, "But I can't leave," remember this. Leaving doesn't always mean driving across the country. Sometimes leaving means refusing a role, refusing unpaid labor, refusing emotional manipulation, refusing to be the default solution. You can stay physically close and still change the rules. And if you ever wonder whether choosing yourself is worth it, ask this. If you disappeared tomorrow, would they miss you as a person or just miss what you did for them? The answer to that question tells you everything you need to know. I reached the end of the beach path and stopped watching the sun rise over the water white, spreading slowly across the surface. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just real. That's what freedom looks like. Not fireworks, not applause, Just the quiet knowledge that your life belongs to you, not to tradition, not to guilt, not to expectation, to you. And if there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this. Revenge isn't destroying the people who overlooked you. Revenge is building a life where their approval is no longer required. A final note. This story contains some fictional details to enhance the drama and emotion, but the lessons and patterns we address are entirely real and still happen to many people every day. If this style doesn't suit you, that's okay. Find other content that better fits your needs.